Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and good morning everyone. Today we are going to discuss chapter 3.1, implementing Active Directory. So for the objective, we have one objective here: to plan, design and install Active Directory. So our outline for this chapter is AD planning stage. We have domain structure, domain namespace, OU structure, site structure, AD design stage, and AD install stage. So these terms, I think we already discussed in the previous lecture regarding to the domain structure, domain namespace, organization unit structure, and site structure. Sorry. So, AD planning stage for the domain structure as a core unit of a logical structure of Active Directory. And the domain structure needs to be planned carefully by considering first a logical and physical environment, administrative requirements, domain requirements, and domain organization need. So for logical structure, so what we need to consider when we are going to design a logical structure is understanding how the daily operations and understand how it operates functionally and geographically. For the physical structure, the consideration is depends on the determining the technical requirements, determining the user requirements such as a number of employees, growth rate, plan for expansion. Other of that, determine the network requirements, how the network connection are organized, network connection speeds, and also how the network connection are utilized TCP/IP subnets. So if you can see here, this is a logical structure. Okay, and the admin must do a purchasing, distribution, and sales for the functional device in the logical structure. However, for the physical structure, there are a lot of things that we must do done. For example, for the administration, there are 15,000 employees, and then the purchasing for 6,000 employees. Distribution department, this is department, department distribution, sales and purchasing, 7,000 employees, and sales for 4,000 employees. So all of these requirement must be considered in the physical structure. Second is administrative requirement. So what we must to consider for the administrative requirement is identify the method of the network administrative, centralize a single team, smaller companies, decentralize for number of teams divided by location and business function, and customize depends on the business needed. Next is a domain requirement. So for the domain requirement, they are single domain, the easiest one, which the things that must be considered is about the start with the single domain. One domain can span multiple sites and contains millions of the of the objects, and one domain can span into the multiple geographical sites and able to include users and computers belonging to the multiple domains, and able to model organization's management hierarchy for delegation administration using the organization units, and able to assign the group policy in the terms of GP and place users, groups, and computer into the organization units. Continue for uh, the previous one is we must consider more than one domain. Is that as now we have one domain, so now we must consider about more than one domain, where it must decentralize network administration, replication control, different password requirements between the organizations, massive number of objects, different internet domains, and also the international requirements, international protocol requirements. Number four is a domain organization needs. The things that must consider is must organize the domains into a hierarchy that fits the needs of organization if the organization needs more one domain. Second is arrange domains into a tree or forest depending on the company business needs, and as the domains are placed in a tree forest hierarchy, the two-way transitive translation allow the domains to share the resources. Next stage is AD planning stage. For the domain namespace, must first you choose the register a unique parents of the NS name can be used for hosting your organization on the internet. And then it can be performed to a search to see if the name already registered for another entity. So once we have choose the DNS name, we can combine the name with a location organization name with the organization to form the subdomain. For example, Microsoft.com or Denver.Microsoft.com. Same for the internal and external namespace. Example, Microsoft.com can be used for internal and external company. And then we also can separate the internal and external namespace. For example, inside firewall we use the msn.com, but outside the firewall we use the Microsoft.com. Domain name requirement and guidelines. So for the domain name, must have we must follow the guideline such as select a root domain that will remain static, and also we must use a simple unique names, use a standard DNS character and Unicode characters, limit the number of domain levels, no more than 5 levels down hierarchy, about length domain names, and domain names can be up into 63 character, include the domain name. And then next is the AD planning stage. It's a OU structure or organization unit structure. So organization unit allow you to model the organization in a meaningful and manageable way to assign an appropriate local authority as administrator at any hierarchy level. Consider creating the organization unit if you want to do following, right? Reflect your company structure and organization within the domain. Without the organization unit, all users are maintained and displayed at a single list regardless of the user's department location. Delegate administration control over the network resources but maintain the ability to manage them. So you can grant the admin to permission to users and groups of a user at the organization unit level, and then accommodate the potential change in the company organization structure. We can reorganize user between the organization units easily, and we can reorganize user between the domain generally requirements more than time and effort. Group object is to allow the administrators to locate the similar network resources easily, to the simply to the simplify security and perform any admin tasks. For example, we can group all the user for temporary employees into the organization units called temp employees. Restrict visibility of the network resources in Active Directory, where the users can just view only the object which they have access. So you can see the model of organization unit hierarchy. Okay, we have the business function OU here, geographical base OU and business function geographical OU. Next is site structure. So site structure is a single domain that include multiple sites. A single site that can include multiple domain or parts of multiple domains. The way in which you set up the side effect for the Windows 2008 is two-way. Okay, but now we are using the 2019. So there are two ways for the 2019. For example, the workstation log on and application and directory replication. So workstation log on and authentication is when a user log on and Windows 2000 will try to find a DC in the same site as the user's computer to service users log on request a subsequent request for the network information. Directory replication, you can configure the schedule and path of the replication domain directory differently for the inter-site replication as opposed the replication with the site, and generally you can set the replication between the sites to be less frequent replication within the site. Optimize the workstation log on traffic. While planning sites consider which domain controls the workstation on a given subnet should use to have a particular workstation only the log on a specific set of DC. and define the sites that on those DC are the same subnet at the station. When the planning site, consider when the DC and network connection between the DCs will be located, and because of each DC, okay, domain control must participate in directory replication with the other DCs in this domain. Configure sites so that replication occur at the times interval that will not interfere the network performance. Next is AD design stage. So AD design stage is there are several steps in the designing site structure for organization with a multiple physical location. Okay, for example, the assess the physical environment, determine the physical location that form the domains, determine which area network should be site, identify the physical link connection sites for each site of the object, determine the cost, schedule, default cost 100, for example, default schedule every 3 hours, provide a redundancy by configuring a site link bridge. So AD install stage. So after we already set up everything, so this is time for the installation stage. So DC must be set to run a mixed modes. First time install or upgrade, and also the benefits for the mixed modes mode is to allow the DC to interact with the DC domain that are running in the previous version of Windows, and then uh, switch from the mix to the native mode when all the DC runs in the Windows and no change at all. Operation masters. An operation master refers to the DC that is responsible for a particular role. Multi-master replications happens when some changes are replicated across the domains and forests. To avoid replicates conflict, assign a single domain controller as a single master replication. In any Active Directory forest, 5 operation master roles must be assigned to one or more domains controller. Some roles must appear in every forest. Other roles must appear in every domain in the forest. First is schema master, domain naming master, primary domain controller emulator, relative identifier master, and infrastructure master. Roles wide forest wide rules. So there are two rules in the forest wide: schema master and domain naming master. So description for the schema master is control all the update to the schema which contains the master list of the object classes and attributes, and the domain naming master is a control the addition or removal of a domain in the forest. Note here, only one schema and one domain naming entire uh, in the entire setting. Domain wide rules. So domain wide rules. First, we have primary DC emulator. It acts as a window NTPDC to support any backup DC running in Microsoft Windows and within a mixed mode domain. This type of domain has a DC that run Windows, and then PDC emulator is the first DC that you can create a new domain. Relative identifier is whenever the DC create user group or the computer object is assigned the object in unique security ID. The security ID also keep the security ID also include of the domain security ID, which is the name of the all security created in the domain, and the relative ID that is a unique security ID created by the domain. And the last one for this chapter is about the infrastructure master. For the description is when the object are moved from the domain to another, the infrastructure master update object reference in its domain that point to the object in the other domain. And the object reference contains the object globally unique identifier GUID, distinguish name and SID, and also the ID predically updates the distinguished name and SID what whenever the object move within the domain and the deletion of the object. So note here, each of domain in the forest has their own PDC emulator and RAD master infrastructure master. So that's all for the 3.1 chapter. So we continue with for next chapter 3.2. Thank you.